So good evening, everyone. My name is Song Han Peng, and I'm with my partner, Jennifer Wu. We're part of the program BranchOut, as you can probably tell, which is a nonprofit program with various education leaders that was co-founded by Dr. Yusheng Wu and Mr. Richard Wang in 2015. So this year we have around 150 high school student mentors. They come from over 40 different schools and across 4 states this year. So we started out as a peer STEM mentoring program, working at various community centers, homeless shelters, and also county summer credit recovery programs in the greater Washington, D.C. area. And this year we've expanded into a community outreach program to promote cross-cultural understanding by featuring community heroes, creating research articles, and organizing career panels. So as an award-winning community engagement program, we've also received endorsement from U.S. Congress, including Senator Tim Kaine and former Congresswoman Barbara Comstock. Additionally, our innovative program also won the U.S. Congressional App Challenge Award last year.
Great. So as a part of BranchOut's goal to promote civic engagement, community, and STEM education, we are so excited to be presenting this very informative panel on role models in our community with tonight's theme, Caring for Our Community. The past few months have been challenging for the nation and the world as a whole, and looking after and caring for our communities has never been more important. Our speaker tonight has been advocating and supporting communities for many years, and our featured speaker is Tony Lodge, an aged-out foster care youth advocate, and he works as an executive board member at Sun Scholars to provide resources for foster youth. But despite aging out of foster care in Kentucky, Mr. Lodge decided to pursue a sciences education at Western Kentucky University, where he served as a student ambassador to. And he is now studying at Georgetown University. He currently works with multiple DC agencies such as the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute to address foster care reforms at the national level.
Right, so let me take a moment to introduce BranchOut's co-founder, Dr. Yusheng Wu. So Dr. Wu is the co-founder of Veritas Education Leaders and chair of the Harvard Asian American Alumni Alliance DC. So as a woman minority entrepreneur and educator, Dr. Wu has been invited to speak at numerous events on topics including race relations, international education, and mental wellness as well, by organizations such as Harvard University and McDonald's education workshops. So because of her passion to bring equity to all and raise cross-cultural awareness, she created BranchOut, a youth community outreach program in 2015. As an award-winning program, BranchOut has launched several innovative projects to bring the communities closer together. All right. So we're thrilled to have you with us this evening, and I'm sure you all will provide valuable information for all of us. And also audience members will have the opportunity to ask questions for our speaker at the end.
Great. Thank you, Song Han and Jennifer. I'm Dr. Yusheng Wu. I'm so glad to have Tony with us today. As I mentioned to Tony that we're gonna make this more like a conversation. So Tony is in a coffee shop at the moment, so
yes.
but it's again really great having you tonight with us. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your background? Like what is your story?
Currently, I want to thank everybody on this panel for being here. I'm extremely blessed to even be in the midst of ambitious and motivated young people and their kind of their partnerships that they're aligned with. So right now, what I'm doing, I am kind of stabilizing the effects of COVID-19 upon foster youth and adopted youth and aged out youth, along with low-income communities, raising money, continuing to get the resources out there for foster youth to take advantage of during these times. And kind of my story right now is maintaining sanity as everyone, is trying to do. my story is very unique, but it's also simple at the same time. It's taking risk and seeing a problem and understanding. Seeing a problem and understanding that you have to leap, and you have to be able to say, this problem stinks, but I'm obligated to fix it. My story starts in Kentucky. Growing up, it was always tough. I grew up in the foster care system, but I was adopted when I was small. I had suffered from Bader syndrome, which is sort of a rare disease, but at the same time, I had heart problems. And so I had 2 open heart surgeries. And even with that, it was still the life expectancy. You just didn't know. There were many uncertainties. I was adopted later in my years. I was adopted by an evangelical family. And what a wonderful family it was. But then placed back into foster care, I had gained roots, and this became a struggle, and I was placed in the African American home. And growing up in an evangelical home, there isn't a lot of bless your heart, but I was very much also sheltered at the time in regards to racism, in regards to inequality. And this was in Bowling Green, Kentucky. When I was placed back into foster care, I was I was in the eastern part of Kentucky. It's a little bit rougher down there, but I was with an African American family, and I was able to see a different side of socioeconomics, inequality in America, and kind of the struggle for people of color. And I have been very much shielded all the way up to this point. I think, when I wanted, when I was with my African American family, I had foster brothers, and a lot of people don't know. A lot of foster youth, they come from traumatized situations. They come from situations that they have no control over. Does that mean they're horrible individuals? No. Most foster youth they're not by their own doing, but because parents had failed, or when sometimes they had no place to go. Being an African American and living in an African American home for the first time, and having different sets of foster brothers, and my foster brothers consisted of white, Latino, African American, mixed, and they all came from different cultural backgrounds. You can say the projects, you can say rural America, you can say the old homeboy, country boy. We all were a mix, and it allowed me to be able to draw and be able to connect. It took a while. We all had differences, but our African American family, our parents, they kind of accepted who we were. And we would go to school, and school was always a nightmare for us all, because most foster youth, they don't come from money. There is no money for them. So when you're going to a majority white school, there can be a lot of implications of embarrassment. If you're wearing the same clothes, or if you're, we have a tendency to love luxury brands in America. We love to flash it, and it's in our nature. We like shiny things, basically. But a lot of foster youth don't have that. And they're struggling to fit in. They can, you know, you'll hear a lot about foster youth who, you know, may get in trouble or along these lines. And, you know, you have to remind people he may be doing that because something's not right. Uh, for me, growing up, you know, we shopped at a place called Roses, and it was a income type of store. And I don't even know if they're around anymore. But, you know, we didn't have the money to go to the Nike outlet or Abercrombie and Fitch or a Hollister when it was popular. And so this not only gave us a sense of do more with less, but it also gave us a sense of, you know, um, proving something. Because if we didn't have it, it was always, you know, them, us versus them. And we kind of took that approach. All my foster brothers, you know, they were very much, they had come from rough backgrounds, and a lot rougher than my own. You know, and trying to mesh with them was difficult, but as time went on, there was a trust level. For us African Americans, and, you know, even poor white Americans, going to a upper tier school in the South was very much difficult. And people say, you know, oh, racism wasn't that tough back then. It was really tough. I remember in middle school, I had, they're my friends now, but back then, you know, you would get called the N-word, and you would get called, you know, if you were a poor white person, you know, it was, you know, you would be called trash, or you just would never be accepted at all. And we have these mindsets where, you know, yes, people of color face racism, but I would also say racism is almost on the same extent as classism. And white people face that, poor whites face that as well, which is classism. And they are not included in a lot of things. And African Americans are the same way. So we're all poor, and we all know this. And through middle school, through high school, we would lean on one another. You know, I would help my foster brothers with their schoolwork, but they were more interested in playing sports. And they were more interested in, they were very risky, very, they were gritty, risky, and, you know, they didn't, there was always short-term thinking. In my case, because I had an adopted family who, they may not know that they had taught me long-term plans. If you ever get the chance to have a week to yourself and to really sit and think, I think I believe a lot of people don't understand that a child that can think just and slow down and think, they're more likely to be relaxed, less stress. There's no anxiety, there's no depression. And, you know, you have, with foster youth, you have young men and women who don't get to stop. They don't get to stop and think. So when we're talking about poor economic status, you always have to be thinking in short-term goals. Short-term, that is the mindset of poverty. It is a short-term thinking. There's not enough time to think long-term. So for me, because I had grown up in, for a short period of time with an adopted family that had a stable environment, it gave me the ability to, I need to slow down and think about why I'm doing these decisions. My foster brothers didn't have that. And it didn't matter if they lived in the country, and it didn't matter if they lived in the projects. They didn't have that. So with that being said, you know, they wanted to play basketball because it was the quickest thing to get rich. There was no, or, you know, they wanted to, I got to go to the military. And nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with that. But I said, do you want to serve, or do you want the check that they're going to give you after boot camp? And, you know, I had already thought about those things. With that being said, when we reached high school, you know, we had got transitioned. We transitioned from an African-American family. And that was the biggest transition of sort of, you know, my life, because I had become deeply rooted in what it meant to be an African-American. But there was a twist to where I got pushed into a all deep white South foster family. And this is where, you know, my foster parents in the South, they were very much loving and kind. And they had the best hearts. But there was also a learning curve for them as well. And that was, you know, racism, or you know, a lot of ignorance can be mixed in with racism and not meant to be racist. You know, and we would tell our foster mom, you can't say that stuff. you can't say anything like that. And she I didn't mean it that way. It was a learning curve, but for that, it was deeper in the South, which meant even more. You had a lot of poverty, you had a lot of racism, you had a lot of lack of opportunities, and foster youth altogether didn't have we didn't have the ability to rise up. We didn't have the ability to climb any further. And because of that, a lot of, you know, the opportunities we were searching for, we could not find. Many of our opportunities, we either weren't introduced, or you know, you had to really go searching for it yourself. A lot of my foster brothers, when we had graduated college, and some of them didn't even graduate, some of them dropped out. You know, and the problem with that, because they were thinking short term. When the system says, if you've been in a system for all your life, the moment someone says, people take freedom for granted, and they don't really know what it means to be in a system to where you're not in control. And then you tell these boys, all right, 18, you can either go to school, and in some states it's paid for, in other states it's not. They'll set you up for a program, but this program is only a 6-month program as an aged out foster youth. So, you know, and the way schools are now, the tuition prices and the cost of living, it can be very much difficult. So, you know, I think I knew that. I think I knew that going in. My foster brothers, on the other hand, when they said, you know,
oh, there's still a lot left.
When they wanted to age out, they basically, you know,
It's like an interview that they wanted us to go to.
I'm sorry, Kathy, are you here? Can you mute your mic?
apologies.
Sorry about
Okay. No, you're fine. You're fine. But when aging out, a lot of them were still thinking short term. None of these boys basically thought they could make it in school. So you have young men who are now searching for opportunities. Instead, the quickest opportunity in Kentucky was drugs. If you were trying to make money, the quickest opportunity was getting into drugs. And unfortunately, a lot of foster youth fall into that category. And we have an opioid crisis. We have a meth crisis. We have all these things kind of mixed in because they don't have the means. There's actually this is just facts. You have a better chance of being a low-income student and making it to success than you do a foster care, an aged out foster youth. And that's just facts. Because, and why I'm saying these things is a lot of foster youth, they don't have the means to go, they don't have the means to make it to the top or make it to their full potential. So all my foster brothers had failed. They all failed. And in my story, in my case, it was, I was offered a decision, and it was, you can either go to school, you have to get your own job, you have to find these things for yourself, or you can just leave at the age of 18. Now, freedom sounded real nice. Freedom sounds nice when you've been in the system for so long. But I knew I had this idea. I wanted some sort of opportunity to at least make it in life. So when I put in my application for a community college. They gladly accepted. And I didn't have a full means of paying for everything. And this is what had happened. I was supposed to get it paid for, but not all of it. And so I had to take a job, and I took a job as a janitor at the community college. And that was a humbling experience. And you're working as a janitor, and any young man who is working as, a janitor of some sorts, you're not getting too much game. you're not dating, you're not doing any of these things. You're just watching stuff go by. And, but it gave me the means to take classes. Now, I did fantastic at community college. I was on the dean's list, and, I got crap for being a janitor, but I saved up my money for a 1993 Toyota Camry. And that was a proud day. That was a proud day because, I'd been mopping floors for about a year and a half now. And, my foster mom, my foster mom, my white foster mom, she said, you should go to a 4-year university. And I'm like, possibly not going to happen. I got this associates, I can do whatever. And obviously, I had dreams, but, sometimes we daydream. And, and I forgot to mention my dad, my adopted father, had passed away, but he had also had high hopes for me. And, I did that kind of kicked in as well. And, I had talked to some people, and I was like, maybe I'll apply to the school that my adopted father always wanted me to go to. And, I applied to Western Kentucky University. I remember getting my acceptance letter, and, I was so happy. But during that time, my foster brothers, unfortunately, were still doing, not the best things in life. And, they had gotten to drugs, and they went to prison as well. And, but I remember what they would tell me every time I wanted to ride with them, or Like, no, you're not allowed to go. And I'm like, why? Because you got a future, all right? You have a future. And I'm like, nah, you know, we're family. I got you. Because you develop a relationship and, you know, you love your foster, they become your family. But they kept telling me, nah, he's not allowed to go. He can stay here, you know. And they would purposely say, yeah, just, you know, I forgot something in the house. Go get it real quick. And then they would drive away. And later on, when was leaving for Western Kentucky University, I went to go visit them in prison. And, you know, my foster brother, he had said, you know, this is why I told you, you ain't never gonna ride with me. And I was like, he's like, you know, you have a future. You can make it. And because one of us has to make it out of the system. And he was the closest person, you know, his name was Antonio. And he had a full ride. He was so good at basketball. He had a full ride to UK. He had practice sessions at UK. And if anybody knows college basketball, everybody knows UK is the best. Like, you know, but it's because he didn't see himself as a success story. It's because a lot of the system, what it does, it robs you of your dreams. After you tell a kid he can't be something for so long, he starts to believe it. And that means the decisions become more riskier and they become reckless. And, you know, so he tells me, I want you to go to the school and I've taught you everything you know. I taught you how to be street smart. I've taught you how to, you know, wheel and deal. You can beat these guys. And, you know, I'm telling my boss, I'm not that smart, you know. And I did pretty good on my ACTs and stuff, but in my mind, I wasn't that smart. In my mind, you know, I was just average. And he said, I want you to go and I just want you to do what you would do on the basketball court. And, you know, and so when I get to Western in my 1993 Toyota Camry, my car breaks down on the side of the road. I'll never forget this. Car breaks down. I have to change everything right there. And that's where the struggle just began. And when I got to Western, I was told that the dorms would be open, but they weren't open. And, you know, I had family in the area, but nobody I could really rely on. So I'm sitting in my car, you know, eating Rally's apple pies they were 72 cents back in the day. Most people don't, you know, I'll never forget Rally's. But I had applied for jobs. I was applying, and everybody knows when you apply for a job, the waiting period is ridiculous. Then after they hire you, you have 4 weeks until you actually get paid. And everybody knows that. I mean, it is ridiculous. I think you should get paid like this week, but all in all, they want you to show commitment. And so I'm applying for all these jobs. I'm working 3 jobs. And as soon as the dorms do open, I find out from, you know, my old caseworker and stuff along these lines, oh, you don't qualify for them. So what am I going to do? I had buddies who I met at bars, and they let me sleep on their couch. I didn't really tell my adopted family. They didn't need to know. This was a journey, and there's nothing anybody could do to save. I had to save myself. I felt like I had triple majored at Western. Once the portal for admissions open, and you know, you get to declare your major, I knew how the system went, and it was no different than high school, you know, but you had to get it for yourself. So I'm taking like 21 hours each semester. Like, it is insane. And I would go to the bars too, but I'd make sure all my homework was done. But I didn't go to the bars like most people go to the bars. Most people go to the bars because they're trying to let loose, or the stress from finals, or there's a test coming up. I didn't have the fancy clothes. I didn't have any of that. A lot of what I did, I would shop at consignment stores and I'd make them look, you could find a polo or something like that. You didn't want to stand out too much. And, it was the struggle of not only being homeless at times, but you can't, in college, if everybody found out that you were struggling like this, how embarrassing would that have been? It would have been very embarrassing. And then calling, your old family, and then, you have people who are oohing and awing you of, wow, he's really doing it. So in my mind, it was, I can't let these people down who placed just a small sliver of hope in me, especially my foster brothers who were sitting in prison. And, and so I'm triple majoring. I'm just, I'm wheeling and dealing, and I am I'm wowing my professors, and I had a low GPA, but I came to figure out that it wasn't about my GPA more than it was about just being in the room. And I started to understand that if I could get with my professors, let's get coffee, let's do this. Because as a foster youth, when you don't have any money, or if you're just poor in general, remember what I told you guys, short term? I don't have time to think about the 4.0s. I have to, make sure that I have enough money. And, I didn't get fast at the first try. I just didn't, even with my handicap. I don't know what happened with all the papers, but I had $78 in my pocket. I had sold my Xbox 360s to past family members to get the money to even come to Western. So I didn't have money starting out. I was completely broke, and I was still waiting for checks from my job. But it still wasn't enough money. So on the weekends, I decided to pick up another job. And now this is 4 jobs, and I was a Bob Evans dishwasher, and I was washing dishes for the entire night. And then I would go back to my buddy's couch, and he let me use his laptop, and I'm knocking out all my assignments. And I'm just like, I could definitely tell I missed a lot of commas and periods between some of those essays too. But I had explained to my professors, don't tell anybody, but this is my situation. This is where I'm trying to go. And I had learned how to navigate the system correctly until I could have more of a stable environment. When I graduated, I had a low GPA, and I was like, as long as I got all my bachelors, I'm good. This is it. My foster mom and my adopted family came and seen my graduation. They didn't know the struggle of it all, though. They didn't know about the homeless situations. They didn't know about me really trying to push myself. And there were days where I had my sister. She had helped me out a little bit too, but there was just never enough money, and I was literally always struggling. But I knew I was savvy enough, and I was street smart enough to be able to get through all the rigorous requirements. And I wasn't taking, I knew, if you're a poor kid, you do not have the luxury of going to college and saying, I'm going to get an art degree. You have to get a science degree, because we all know, who makes the money. And that was on my mind. So that's what I did. And I leveled up in science. And, lo and behold, thank God, I had found out it was from some of the faculty. They, I got this letter, and it was like, I'm like, oh, what did I do? Because I had got, for my bachelor's, people were like, how'd you get so many degrees and certificates? I had professors who, if I stayed extra hours, they were going to award me, higher credit points, and they were going to say, okay, you qualify for this extra day. So I would stay. And at the same time, I wasn't just working these 4 jobs. I would ask my bosses, I was in every club, and I would, I'd say, I want to be a part of the club. I'm not trying to be a leader. I just need to be a part, because I didn't have time to always dedicate. But it was my ability to communicate effectively and say, I'm willing to do this, this, and this. And it did. Every club I joined, they allowed me to do some sort of, I had to do stuff, but I didn't put my business out there, but I made sure to be a part of everything. Connection, sometimes a lot of connections, and a lot of people won't tell you, will beat whatever failure you've had in the past, especially if you're putting yourself out there in the educational field. But I had found out that I was the only foster youth in Kentucky that had graduated with multiple degrees at that time. So, news is going to Frankfurt, the capital of Kentucky, and they came back and they said, we want to pay for your master's. And now I'm like, my master's, like, but the catch-22 was, I have to get myself into graduate school. We'll pay for it, but you have to get yourself in there. So I'm like, okay, all right, I can do that. And someone says, well, you have to take the GRE. And, so I never buy the book. I usually go to Barnes & Noble and I skim the book for about 2 hours. And then, so I'm like, there's no way working 3 or 4 jobs, plus doing, all these internships, am I going to be able to study for this GRE? So I call total, I'm like, no, I can't do this. I go to my professors and I'm saying, is there any way that I can skip the GRE? And, they were hesitant, and I'm like, it's because they were hesitant that I knew that they were pondering it. And so I knew, okay, let me do you this one. And I said, I won't just do a master's, I'll do even more than a master's. I'll do certificates and along those lines. Well, the next day he's like, let me think about it. And I always go above and beyond in any position I do, because favors like this, they do happen. And I get an email the next morning saying, all right, we'll waive your GRE. And I'm like, great, when can I start? And so I got into grad school. And not only that, they awarded me a scholarship along with my school getting paid. So now I have, a stable place to stay. I have a car, and I have jobs. And when I finished my master's degree, I graduated magna cum laude. And they were like, it was way better than a 2.3 GPA. Like, but after you get a master's and you graduate top honors, you get very ambitious. And looking back on my circumstances and my story, I wanted to do something about foster care. I wanted to do something about wealth inequality. I wanted to do something about communities being more involved with the youth. And I said, I want to go to Harvard. And all my friends were saying, oh, come on, that's a daydream. And I knew I wanted to go to Harvard. I thought I could get in. And I was working at the time as a fellow for the WKU International Maharians Honors College, which helps with international development. Now, I did not know that that one of the board members was a Harvard alumni. And, to get in this guy's office, you had to pull some strings. You had to know somebody. You had to be wealthy. I had went to Goodwill to buy a dead man suit, which is basically a suit with the dead man's stitches in them. I think the older people on this panel would basically know what a dead man suit is. And so I go back with this suit that is just, it does not fit me at all. And the guy I'm meeting with, his name was Gordon. And Gordon, he says, "Come on in, Tony." And, I'm walking in and he says, "You know what's funny?" And I said, "What's that, Gordon?" He said, "You work at the lower level of my building at the desk and you're a fellow within our sector." And I was like, "Right, you are." And he said, "How did you get in here?" And so after that, I'm telling him my story and I'm telling him, "I want to go to Harvard. I think I can do this." And he looks at me and he's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "No, yeah, what are you doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "I don't really have much going on. Meet me at the bar at 8:45 at night." And I'm like, "You party?" And he's like, "No. I'll go there sometimes," he says. And so I meet him at this bar, at this college bar. And he says, he asked me, "How committed are you?" And I said, "For what?" He said, "If you're wanting to go to Harvard, if you're wanting to do these big things, you got to have commitment." I said, "I've been committed since day one, trying to better myself. It's grown into more ambition each day, but I do want to get better." And, he says, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I say, "No, can't find one." And he says, what type of car you drive?" "I drive a Camry. She'll go forever." And, he's telling me, "Do you have some place to stay in DC?" I said, "I got a sister there. She'll let me stay there." And he writes me a check for $5,000. And he says, "Go to DC." He says, "Is your stuff already packed?" I went home and I packed all my stuff. I was ready to go. He hands me this check. I thought it was fake. I thought this guy had, I thought he was going to juke me. Turns out the check was real. Thank God. And I pack all my stuff and I leave for DC. And I head east. When I get here, he wrote me a letter for the congressman so I could have a fellowship. And, I'm on the Hill. I had enough money to get 2 suits. And I'm working day in, day out. Now, $5,000 in DC, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been to DC. $5,000 don't last very long. And so how do I scale up? How do I level up as a foster youth, And at this point, my taste for luxury kicked in, and I was like, I want some Brooks Brothers suits. Because I seen everybody on the Hill, they were wearing this certain brand, and I was like, okay, I want that. I end up going to one of the stores. I only had 2 suits, remember, and I'm talking to this lady, and she says, "Oh, I used to work on the Hill," and I tell her, this is who I know. This is I work there on the Senate side, and I tell her everything about my story, and then she asked me, and she's like, "How many suits you want?" And I said, I'm just getting a shirt because that's all I can afford." And she says, "How about this? How about," she said, and I had to show her pictures that I worked on the Hill and stuff, and she's like, "This is what I want you to do." She's like, when you go to the Hill, I want you to give out my card." And I was like, "Okay, what do I get in return?" She said, "I'll put all your suits and your jackets on my account, you won't pay a dime. All I ask for is you to, I want you to give out cards to the senators and congressmen. So I got all my stuff for free. Like this shirt I'm wearing right now, it came from Brooks Brothers. Like, and so I had all that, and it was just a blessing. And you know, now I'm in, you know, now I have more than 2 suits. And you know, I'm working, and I start getting noticed by some of the congressmen and senators. I had, you know, after my fellowship, I had left to go to Baltimore. I wanted to do community organizing work. I had done a lot of foster care advocacy. I've spoken in front of Congress. I was able to, you know, lead policy and help with policy, help influence legislation. And, you know, I wanted to do community work. And I left for Baltimore, and I was working in low-income community in the projects of Baltimore, with housing and asbestos difficulties. And, you know, I liked doing that, except, you know, the community had said, you need to go back to DC. And I was like, well, why would I do that? Because power constructed, low-income communities don't have a lot of power, so they get manipulated. And so now, you know, I have to go back to DC. I don't know, you know, all the aspects of how I'm going to reintegrate into, you know, the political camaraderie of, you know, Washington politics. You know, I applied for this top firm. I didn't even think I had a chance, and I didn't have a chance. My mentor, he's the one interviewing me, and he says, you know, you don't have a law degree. I'm like, nope, I only have a master's. He's like, but you want to do all these things. And I said, you know, I'm willing to work extremely hard. And, you know, I had got a recommendation from Kennedy, you know, I was able to get into the firm. But as soon as I got into the firm, I noticed a lot of aspects of wealth inequality. Like, you've seen the wealth that they had. We had people coming in making suits for these guys and gals, and they had lots of money. And I could tell that. I was working day in and day out. And even when I was on the Hill, I had got a job at Starbucks. So I was working as a barista. And I didn't want to give my barista job up either, because I was getting pretty darn good at making them too. And, you know, I had noticed these things, and I was working extremely hard. Well, I had worked so hard that the CEO of the firm, bless her heart today, you know, I was writing the reports, and she's like, oh, who's writing these reports? And, you know, they come, you know, I get to meet with the CEO, and I kind of tell her my story, and you know, she's like, well, I'm on the Congressional Coalition Adoption Institute, and I'm on the board, and, you know, I do all these things for the type of advocacy you want. And I told her my high aspirations, and I told her, she's like, oh, I'm a Harvard fellow too. I'm like, well, and all these things, you know, that had happened, and there's so many elements. And even Kennedy, he sent me to Harvard, you know, to sit in on classes. All these, there's so many, because I took a risk, because I was kind of doing the right things, you know, a lot of what had happened, you know, a lot of what did happen, it kind of gave me a sense of purpose. And the CEO, she introduced me to even more members within the DC limelight. And, you know, one was like, you know, I had another mentor. He was like, you know, you should go to Georgetown. And I was like, oh, I can't get into Georgetown. I don't have the money. And he says, oh, don't worry about it. I'll pay for it. And I'm like, so now I'm getting Georgetown paid for it. And I'm, you know, leveling up even more. And I'm scaling, you know, my educational attainment at this point is out of the roof. And, you know, then I have mentors saying, we want you to apply to Harvard now. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get in, you know, and it's your story that magnifies the application. And a lot of foster youth, they didn't have the opportunity to go the distance. They didn't have the opportunity to get to achieve some of these. So I felt a lot of obligation to, you know, whatever is given, you know, you need to do something about it. You know, there's a great verse in the Bible, Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is expected. So, you know, if you get a lot, you need to capitalize on that and then go back and help everybody else. And this is, I guess how I can say this is if you see a system that stinks, then you probably have an obligation to do something about it. And I can't promise everybody that, you know, you'll get just stuff handed to you. You won't. You know, there are a lot of times, even in DC, where I was working as a barista, and I wasn't even living in DC. I don't know if anybody knows how much DC rent is, but it is insanely high. I was traveling an hour a day back and forth to DC to make these connections because I believe so strongly in, you know, reforming the foster care system, but also bringing light to wealth inequality that affects not just foster youth, but low income youth as well. And so you have all these elements that, you know, that happened in my life that I felt the need to do something about. And you know, this fall, I applied to Harvard. Hopefully I'm going to get in. And you know, my goal is, you know, to reform the system, but you know, also bring light to wealth inequality within America, because it affects all sectors. It affects everyone. But right now, you know, for my advocacy, foster care and foster youth, there's so many. There was a study that came out, you know, a month ago. 74% of sex trafficking is foster youth. A mass, 48% of homelessness stems from foster youth. Incarceration rates increase because of foster youth. So I noticed these trends, and you know, while at Georgetown right now, I have dove into artificial intelligence and storytelling because a lot of the information we can help navigate an algorithm for foster youth to kind of follow a blueprint of sorts that can help them and companies kind of create upward mobility and stability. I think, yes, stability for foster youth. And that is because to move forward, you first have to be stable. You have to be balanced. So a lot of that right now, due to COVID-19, is the system's being ravaged. But it's up to people like me and, you know, people who do have a caring heart, whether you have a law degree, whether you have a policy degree, whether you have educational degree, whether you have a PhD, your elements of, you know, your advocacy and activism, it matters. And it matters definitely in the circumstances of foster youth. But I think for young people, you have to take a risk and you have to be uncomfortable about the risk. I mean, you have to be in uncomfortable situations to even risk anything. You know, I always tell people, why are you going there are problems within the US that you don't need to go to Zimbabwe or Africa to solve. They're already here. You don't have to, the call to activism is never going far away. It's usually right in front of your eyes if you just notice it. And so
Yeah,
for,
I can agree with that more. And I guess I had an easy job because I only asked one question and then that was it, right? And then, Tony, you were able to talk for an hour, which is great. So I just wanted to be mindful of time, like. But anyway, I just wanted to. I really appreciate what you have shared because we were talking earlier before everybody joined. We talked about how sometimes our students, and that's why I really wanted to invite our student mentors to this, to the meeting tonight, was because I wanted them to have maybe a little more empathy in terms of knowing that everybody has a story just because you shared about this with me, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, that you can be homeless, but you can look just like, right, other
yeah,
people can't really tell. So when we mentor or tutor some of our kids, especially from the community centers, we don't know what their stories are, right? And I still remember one student who got really frustrated with one kid, one of our mentors. He got really frustrated with one kid who was like, math is math, math is easy, why can't you get it, right? So he just, there was no empathy or not enough empathy to realize that people learn differently. And you also mentioned this, if you're hungry, right, if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you're not thinking about your 4.0, right? You're not
yeah,
thinking about, like, I need to get my my higher GPA, right? Because you're waiting or fighting for that food shortage, right? So I think there's a lot that you shared tonight. I mean, every time I talk to you, I learn so much. I'm like really, really grateful. I met you last year when you were at Harvard's event. That's when I kind of caught
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Hey, Tony, like, we need to talk more, right? And then we invited Tony to our celebration event last year. You didn't talk as much because we only gave you like 5 minutes. And then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we needed, we needed to learn more from him, that's for sure. I'm so grateful today. We have like people from 7 different states, 2 different continents
Wow.
joining us today. And so I just wanted to make sure we have, maybe like give one, maybe one question. So this is from our one of our mentors, Jennifer. She's asking, what specific actions would you like those in the more upper classes to take for those in foster care, other than donation and such?
So what does she mean, upper classes, I guess?
So I guess maybe you mentioned classes
Oh,
earlier. So maybe people with more money, right? Wealth.
okay. There, and see, it's not, I believe in donations. I believe, in giving, but I also believe in, nothing can change if you don't go to, if you're in school and kind of the self-awareness, and that's something schools don't teach. A lot of schools don't teach. Self-awareness is a skill. Um, a, a lot of schools do have sort of like, and when I was going to school, even when I was homeless, there wasn't a sector in which I could just, I need help. So I think on a lot of universities, which right now they're struggling with, and they need sort of a hub or a kind of a sector that, if there are poor kids at that university, we need to create kind of a global, I mean, not even global, like a solid foundation for them to be able to, I'm struggling right now, you know, but I'm trying to get back at it. And I think if low income, not just foster youth, but low income youth, you have to, you got, I think it's sometimes hard for people to see it. But if you create because nobody's going to come out and tell you that, hey, I'm poor. No, like, or, you know, not the people who actually want to do better or foster youth, or nobody's going to say that. Sometimes it's creating a system that attracts, but nobody really knows, because nobody likes to go to a place. Nobody, you know, we don't go to the coffee shop and talk about welfare checks. We go to the coffee shops and talk about new jobs and connections. You know, it's things like that that we can kind of create a space for people who don't want to specifically say, hey, you know, I'm struggling, because nobody likes to tell anyone that they're struggling. It's not in our nature. And so creating what upper class can do is, you know, if you are a young person with influence, privilege, and money, it is talking to people who are associated with institutions saying, hey, this is some of the stuff we need to fix. This is some of the stuff we need to do. I've worked with individuals, you know, even at my firm, who have tons of money. And they are like, you know, I never really thought about it like that. But I had assumptions that were inaccurate, or you're breaking down those barriers, and you'll see, you know, regardless of what political side you're on, that there are more people hurting in society, and they need some sort of hub, but it needs to be sort of a hub that nobody wants, that is discreet. Because if a kid can come to you and nobody knows, and he's saying, you know, I'm struggling, he doesn't want the whole world to know. You know, especially in college, because it doesn't help with, you know, friends. It doesn't help with dating. It doesn't help with any of that. So I think that's one of my things for, you know, upperclassmen is just know how your money or how your influence is impacting those around you. And usually you got to go searching for it too. It's not something, and like I keep saying, you have to put yourself out there. You have to get uncomfortable, and you have to take risks. So you're not going to find it if you're upperclassmen in your circle. You're not going to find it. I guarantee you that. And if you do, that person's probably not going to be with you later on in the day. You need to follow that person's footsteps. Then you'll find out, oh, I'm struggling. I didn't know you were struggling. You know, but you're not, it's just going out of your way to find it.
Yeah, this is really great advice, because that's why we created BranchOut, right? Is to force our young people to branch out of their comfort zone. You learn when you're put in a difficult or comfortable situation. And I found this from your website. It says,
Oh yeah.
"Slow walker, but I never walk backwards." I really, really like that. So,
So it's actually a Abraham Lincoln quote. Yes.
Great. And so I know Jennifer and your partner, you guys did an interview on Tony. So we will be publishing Tony's story and sharing that with everybody. So just make sure to check out our website. So I know people have more questions, but we also want to be, you know, respectful of Tony's time. And so I guess, Tony, can people like friend you on, I don't know, LinkedIn? Would that be okay?
Yes. Yes. It's my LinkedIn's open. My social media is pretty much open. If you guys need anything or need, you know, questions, or even kind of policies on child welfare, I'm willing to answer those as well. Just let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Tony and Songhan, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So Jennifer, go ahead.
Right. Okay. So unfortunately, that is all the time we have tonight for questions. On behalf of the whole BranchOut core team, we hope that everybody has enjoyed the event this evening and learned a great deal about successful individuals in the community. We also hope that everybody got a chance to experience the essence of the field, had their questions answered, and maybe even be inspired to pursue or learn more about how to help the community. The community has been a vital part of our daily lives and will continue to be for generations to come. We're also extremely appreciative of our speaker, Tony Lodge, for his time and giving us such great insight and ideas on how we can help our community. It was truly, truly amazing. We are also very appreciative of our entire audience for making this panel so great and asking so many wonderful questions. To learn more about BranchOut and also our future panels, please check us out at www.bellbranchout.org. I think Dr. Wu put the link in the chat. Or like us on Facebook at Veritas Education Leaders. We look forward to seeing you at our next event, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, guys, for coming.
Bye.